So now we're going to look at least common multiple. And the least common multiple is the smallest number that is a multiple of two numbers. So we're going to get to that in a second, but let's talk about what multiples are first. So multiples are just the numbers when you talk about your multiply 1 times a number, then 2 times a number, then 3 times a number. So the multiples of 5 are going to be 5, then 10, then 15, then 20. Multiples of 6 are going to be 6, 12, 18, 24. Multiples of 50 are going to be 50, 100, 150, and 200. So you just keep on adding more and more, and you're going to keep getting more and more multiples. So each time you're multiplying by 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, and so on. So if you do that, you've got a multiple of a number. So that's the first thing. So now we're going to talk about what common multiples are. And common multiples are multiples that are shared by one pair or more than a pair of numbers. So the easiest way to see this is to look at a set of numbers and to see where there are common multiples. So here we have for 10, the multiples are going to be 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60. For 25, it's going to be 25, 50, 75, 100, 125, 150. So those are the multiples, and what I'm going to look for is I'm going to look for the first set of multiples that are in both lines here. So if I look up here for tens, well, the first one that I get that's in both is going to be 50. So that's going to be the least common multiple, or it's frequently called LCM, of 20, of 25 and 10 is going to be 50. Because that's the smallest number that both 10 and 25 divide into evenly. And that's what a least common multiple is. So if you look here, I've taken 30 and 20 and prime factorized them. And if I wanted to find the greatest common factor, what I would do is I would see their shared factors, which in this case would be 2 and 2 and 5 and 5. So the greatest common factor of 20 and 30 is 10, because 10 divides into both 20 and 30. But here I'm looking for the least common multiple. So I'm looking for the smallest number both 20 and 30 go into. And it might come to you right away, but if it doesn't, what you can always do is you can take the prime factorization of the numbers, and for each pair that is shared, you write it down once. So I got that for the 2s and the 5s. And then for everything that's not shared, you also write it down. So 2 times 5 is 10, times 3 is 30, times 2 is 60. So 60 is the smallest number that both 30 and 20 divide into. So here I prime factorized 15 and 12. So now what I'm going to do is the greatest common factor is going to be the shared factors, which in this case is only 3, because 3 is the biggest number that divides into both 15 and 12. But now I've got to figure out the least common multiple, because that's what we're working on. So it's going to be 3 only one time because it's shared. So that gets rid of that and that. Times 2, times 2, times 5. So if I do 3 times 2, that's 6, times 2, that's 12, times 5, that's going to be 60. Oh, 60 again. And that means that 60 is the least common multiple of these two numbers. I'm going to try and do one that's not 60 this time. So here's 80 and 12. I'll prime factorize them. So here they are prime factorized. What do they share? They share one set of 2's and then another set of 2's. So the greatest common factor of these numbers is going to be 2 times 2, and that's going to be 4. But that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for the least common multiple. I got to write it up here now. So for each pair of 2's that is shared, I only write down once. Now I start writing down everything else.
Got to get everything down. So 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is going to be 16. 16 times 5 is going to be 80. 80 times 3 is going to be 240. So 240 is the smallest number that both 12 and 80 divide into. That's the least common multiple. So here I have 15 and 30, last example. I'm going to go ahead and prime factorize them as I did. And I have 3 times 5 and 2 times 3 times 5. So I'm going to circle the ones that are shared. These are shared. These are shared. I only write them down once. 3 times 5. 3 and 5. And then I write down the extra one, which is 2. So 3 times 5 times 2 is actually 30, which I know is the same numbers up here. But 30 is a multiple of 30. It's just 30 times 1. 15 is a multiple, has 30 as a multiple because 15 times 2 is 30. So 30 is the least common multiple of both 15 and 30. So that's what we're going to be working on. Keep this in mind. We'll go over it again in class as we start.